Okay. I'm going to get into this uh, quote from Ramana Maharshi today, I think. I got these little pamphlets when I was in Tiruvannamalai, India. These they're like little booklets, kind of. Anyways, this is from one of them. So from the great Ramana Maharshi. Yeah. So this is a quote. I'm not sure where this is taken from. These are from all different writings of his, or let's say annotations of writing of his. But Ramana says, when the sense of I am the body arises, then the notions of you and he also arise. So when the sense of I am the body arises here, what comes with that is the duality of this and that, essentially. So the notion of I am this body automatically arises that body. So it immediately puts us into the basis of the dualistic experience of this sense of individuality here giving sense to that individuality there. The other thing it highlights, this little part here, I am the body arises the notions of you and he. It also brings up that when the I am the body identification takes place on this side, that gives life to the world, essentially. So I am the body here gives sense to world there. Yeah. That's why they say in Advaita or in yoga or whatever, the world arises with you and dies with you. Because as soon as the idea I am the body pops up, then that gives it life to the duality of the world. Now, the idea I am the body is arising, that's the sense of individuality. But what he's saying is the identification with it. When the sense of I am the body arises, the notions of you and he arise. Or self, let's say this and other, or self, small s self and other arise. That is arising, because it's the sense of individuality. Yeah. So if you identify with that sense of individuality, then it immediately separates this from that. And then, of course, in yoga and Buddhism and all different schools, that's when suffering starts. The suffering starts with the identification here of making the duality there. Yeah. Then there's this two-ness, and that two-ness is at ends, obviously. So if you don't see that the identification with the body is where it starts, then we start to look outward and start to blame world as the cause of the suffering, which is we're already off the mark, essentially, as non-duality is concerned, because the suffering starts with the identification in the body. Yeah, the sense of I am the body, the identification of I am the body, is the root that suffering grows out of. But if we don't see that, then we see from the I am the body idea, and we blame world, essentially, for our problems. And then we try to modify world, or we try to make world do what we want in order to stop the suffering. But the suffering actually starts with the identification here, as in the sense of individuality. Yeah. Then this sense of I am the body gives meaning to the world, but its primary meaning is separate then. And because it's separate then, this thing wants relief or happiness. And because of the idea of separation, it's trying to get it from world. But it starts here. Yeah. So he's saying when the sense of I am the body arises, then the notions of you and he arise. So obviously he's pointing to the sense of I am the body being the origination of the this and that, or the small s self and other. And from that arising, that's where it all begins, essentially. The sense of separation or otherness. That otherness wants to change world in order to make it happy. That is the self-centered movement, yeah? But it doesn't look at the identification with the body being the primary thing. So then he says, but when, by the quest of truth underlying the I sense is put an end to, then the notions of you and he also cease. So when the sense of I am the body arises, then the notions of you and he arise. Yeah. let's say individual, me, and world arise. But when, by the quest of the truth underlying the I sense is put an end to, then the notions of you and he also cease. So by the quest of truth underlying the I. So what he's saying there is when you search for the I, or where the I arises from, the I thought, or the thought me, wherever that pops up from, when you go search for that, it isn't found, because it's not a thing. The I thought is a thought that comes and goes. Yeah. So when you search for the truth which underlies the I sense is put an end to. In a way, because it's not a thing. The thought I or me is presented as a thing inside of the body, like a stone or like, I don't know, a solid thing inside of the body. The I sense is presented as that, yeah, by the mental system. But the thought I is just a thought. It's not a thing underlying. There's nothing there inside. It's a thought that comes and goes. So when you search for where it comes from, meaning the thing that the I thought comes from, there's nothing found there. Because when you identify with the body, the I thought presents as a thing, which means if that's true, then that would mean there's other things outside of it, which is the whole cause of separation in the first place, is taking this to be an independent thing, then everything else is independent things, and that's where the suffering starts. Yeah, that's how it kind of rises and lives on. It lives on the sense of individuality being a solid thing here, giving life to everything else. But when, by the quest of truth underlying the I, underlying the thought, meaning from where does that come from, that I thought? From before it, the I sense is put an end to. Because the I sense is put an end to because there's nothing there. So essentially you see that what you're taking yourself to be is a thought that comes and goes. There's nothing there, yeah. That puts an end to the I sense. So it might still present through the head, through thinking, and then the ownership of that thinking of the I thought, but you've seen it, essentially. You've seen the facade, or like the play, the theatrical movement of that movement, of the I. You've seen that it's saying, I'm a thing, yeah? And that because I'm a thing, you should worry about all the other things. But when you see that it arises from no thingness, it loses its punch, as do most of the thoughts and anxieties and things that come after it. Yeah? So when you search for where the I thought arises from, or the me thought arises from, the sense of I is put to an end as far as its concept, or its what it's presenting to be a permanent thing. This goes right into spiritual practice for I want to be free, or I want to be liberated, yeah? You can see that there's nothing to get liberated from. And what wants to be liberated is not a thing in the first place. It's just a movement, mental movement. So by the quest of the truth underlying the I, where does the I thought come from? The I sense is put an end to. And then when it's put an end to, then the notions of you and he also cease. So when you see that the I thought arises from no thing, that there's no independent thing that it comes up from, then the world also loses its hard kind of idea of being hard separate forms, in a way. So when you see this thing as not completely separate from everything, then you see everything as not completely separate from everything. It's all arising within the open space of awareness or something. It's your nature, let's say. But if the I thought is not investigated, the mental system presents it as a real independent thing. And if we're living under that view, if we're living under that theatrical presentation, that this is an independent, completely independent thing from everything else, then everything else is taken to be completely independent. And because of that, that is like the primary duality which suffering arises from. This is completely independent, so therefore all the world is completely independent. And now it's me against world. And in recovery, that presents a lot of fear to live under that basis. Yeah, it's quite difficult to live under that basis, really, because you're constantly at ends with world, which actually is not reality, because so it gets very uncomfortable, essentially, because it's not the reality of what's going on. So when you quest for the truth underlying the I sense is put an end to, then the notions of you and he also cease. So the notions of you and he also cease as being reality. Now, because the I thought is conditioned movement, it's going to keep presenting its idea that it's independent, and therefore world is separate from, or also independent. Yeah. But when you see through it, you see that it's a play. That's why they say like the rope and the snake. So the I thought is taken to be a snake. And then when you investigate that snake, you see that it's a rope. But it was presenting as a thing. Yeah? So the I thought, me, is presenting as a thing, this body. Me presenting as a thing inside of the body, when investigated, is seen to not be a thing, but yet to be a movement rather than a solid object, let's say. And when it's seen to be a movement, you stop living from the standpoint of being a solid, independent object. So the solid thing which is being presented is seen through. So you thought you saw a snake on the ground, but it's actually a rope when it's investigated. Yeah. And then he says, that which then shines as the sole reminder is the true self. The big S self, of course, to Ramana would be like towards the absolute. That which would then shine, that which then shines as the sole reminder is the true self. So when there's an end put to the belief that the I thought is an independent thing, when it's searched for the truth which is underlying that I thought, or in the case of Ramana, where does that I thought arise from, and it's seen that there's no thing there, there's essentially a sense of openness. Yes? This would be the sole reminder of the true self. So by negating the thingness of the me or the I thought, the separateness of this versus that is also negated. And then essentially seemed what remains, as Ramana would say. Yes, be with what remains when that happens. So when the sense of I am the body arises, then the notions of you and he also arise. So if I am this, you are that body, yeah? And then there's the break. There's the separation, seen to be a snake, essentially, because there's a lot of fear when that separation is presented. When the sense of I am the body arises, the notions of you and he also arise. So the notions of me and world. But when by the quest of the truth underlying the I, so the inquiry here is where does that I thought arise from? Yeah, it's like you take anything back to its source and you can find out where it arises from. By the quest of the truth, with a capital T, underlying the I sense is put an end to. So when you look, where does that I come from? The head, the mental system is assuming that it's coming from a thing, that the I sense or me is a thing. But when that's investigated quite thoroughly, the I sense is put an end to, because it's not coming from a thing. The I sense or the I thought arises out of the self and resolves back into the self. But it's a thought. It comes and goes, yeah? Or in Buddhism they would say, the I thought is of the unessential. The space, the emptiness from which it arises from is essential. Huh? But it's important to know that the thought me or I, as pointing to this body, So when your head says me, it's identifying with this body, obviously. When it's seen that that I thought arises from not a thing, that in essence it comes from open space, yeah, then you also see that it's a thought, meaning it comes and goes, yeah, it's changing, and you are of the never changing. So there's the ever changing, which is the mind and the body, the senses grabbing onto world, yeah, and then there's the never changing, which is the self. Let's say the big S self from Ramanas, okay, or big M mind, as they would say in Buddhism. That I thought arises out of big M mind and goes back into it like a wave comes out of the ocean and resolves back into the ocean. So the basis of this investigation really is to see that the I thought is impermanent. There's not a thing that it arises out of. That's why he says investigate the truth underlying the thought me or I. Because if you investigate that truth, you will see that there's no thing there. Huh? And because of that, you will lose faith on the thoughts that are referencing the I, which are all thoughts because this mental system is self-centered. Yeah? And you can begin to loosen your grip on that I movement or the identification with it as what you are. Because the head is presenting, mental system presenting the I thought as what you are. And if you don't see that, you live under it. And it comes with all of the conditioning of the brain which follows it. The baseline of that conditioning being that that I thought is true, and it actually is what you are, and that gives life to the world. And then there's an innate separation between these two things, and that gets inherently uncomfortable. So the whole basis of really Advaita in general, the I thought is one of the tattvas in Samkhya Yoga. And it's seen to be not you, essentially. So if you can see that it's a non-existent thing, meaning it doesn't have an independent existence of its own, then you lose faith in it being what you are, because it comes and goes. Yeah? And anything that comes and goes must not be what you are. And not only does it come and go, and it's not your nature, but it's presenting this really... duality is not a bad thing, but it can get super uncomfortable, especially in recovery or people who are in the throes of addiction right now. So inquiry is really looking at the truth underlying the I thought. To see that the I thought is just that, it's a thought, not a thing. And when it's seen not to be a thing, you stop living as it. You stop putting tons of faith in the I thought, the self-centeredness, and all the thinking that comes after it. Which is quite important in many ways for a lot of suffering. It gives the basic duality, yeah? But most people that I talk to operate under a core belief that I'm worthless or less than. So if you're living as the thought me, and you're taking the me or the I thought to be a thing, then when your head says I'm worthless or less than, you take that thought to be talking about a you as a thing. But there is no you as a thing, you see? So when the mental system is talking about itself essentially as being worthless, or talking about body as being worthless and less than, if you're living as the I thought as a thing, that's going to hit you super hard. And because it hits you so hard, you're going to want out of it. But if you're identified as the I thought, you can't get out of the I thought as a thing. As a false thing. Because it's presenting as a thing. So self can't get out of self, but me can't get out of me, essentially. But when it comes to depression and core beliefs and the head talking about its ideas about itself, if you take the I thought and the identification with the body to be real, then those core beliefs can really impact your life, meaning you live on that basis from those core beliefs. And that can get super uncomfortable to the point where you might start drugging or drinking or want to harm yourself in order to get out of those thoughts. But the thoughts, I am worthless, is based on the idea that I am a thing, that this is a separate, independent thing. Yeah. So when the thoughts are talking about themselves, if you're taking the I thought, me, which all the other thoughts are referencing, that's why it's I am depressed, I am worthless, I am, I am. It always starts with that me, me, me. If you're taking that me to be a permanent independent thing, you're taking those thoughts to be talking about a permanent independent thing. And then you want to try to get out of those thoughts, but being identified as a permanent independent thing, that's you try to get out of them as a permanent independent thing. And that doesn't work because it can't get it, the system can't get out of itself. So if you see through looking where the I thought comes from, you see that the I thought is literally that. It's a thought. Yeah? It's not a permanent thing. So when the head is chirping about you, yeah, let's say through depressive thoughts or core beliefs or something, if you investigate that the I thought is not an independent thing inherently, you lose faith in those thoughts because you see that they're just talking about themselves based on a misunderstanding of their own misunderstanding. That I am, in an absolute sense, this body separate from everything else. And then if you're not separate from everything else, the worthlessness, in my experience, loses a lot of grip. Because to be worthless or less than, that would mean that duality is the absolute truth. Because if I'm less than, that means I am less than something else. Yeah? And that is based on duality being true. Now this stuff is saying, obviously, that duality is not true. It's not the absolute. The duality is arising in the open awareness of not two. So if you're living as it, if you're living out from, like, I start at the I thought, if your existence starts at the I thought, it's starting from a misunderstanding of being an independent thing. And then when the head talks about that, what it's taking to be an independent thing, those thoughts are taken personally. And it doesn't matter how insane those thoughts are, they're taken personally and to be true because those are my thoughts. But if the my is one of the thoughts and not a thing that's being talked about, you see how it's conditioned and it's just off, essentially. Yeah. That gives you a lot of relief because you don't need to grab the thoughts, and you can also let go of your grip of the I thought. Yeah. And you can see that the mental system is talking about itself based on the conditioning of what that mental system's gone through, let's say, in this life. That brings a lot of relief. So by investigating if the I thought is true or not true, meaning independent thing or if it's an ever-changing thought, to me would be extremely important as far as all the other thoughts are concerned. Yeah. So that's when the head would be talking about you as, let's say, worthless or not good enough or this or that. What it's talking about is itself. Because it's taking the me to be a real thing that it's talking about. This is saying, obviously, that's not true. The self, the big S self or big M mind, is the ever-present space in which that duality arises within. If you live as the duality, really you live under the control of the duality. If you see that the duality is not where you start, then it's more like a play, and you see that the brain is talking about itself. Yeah. And then the other stance of it, because even the brain is dualistic in this way, when it's talking about world, you see that it's talking about world from the standpoint of me being this body independent thing. And then if there's a knowing, let's say, from before mental knowing, that also is not where you start, then you also see a lot of that contents as nonsense as well. Or let's say as lila in the yoga, the play of consciousness or whatever. So when the head is talking about you, let's say I'm not good enough or I'm going to fail or this is whatever, based on you, You see that the you that it's talking about is a thought and not a permanent thing. And then when the head is yapping about world, you see that it's yapping about world from the standpoint of you being a permanent thing, rather than the I thought just being an I thought. So obviously the thought me or the I thought and the world arise together. If you see that the I thought is a thought and that it's not your nature, that you're not in an absolute sense this independent thing, independent from everything else as is being presented by the head, you lose a lot of faith in that idea. It keeps going, the mental system keeps presenting it, because the mental system is convinced that the I thought is a thing. But if you see it from before it, that that's not true, you stop living from its standpoint. And then world and me go on, but you stop grabbing onto it, yeah? So it's like there's still wind moving through the space of the sky, but the sky is not moving. You see that you're the sky, and then the wind of the I, thought, and body keep moving. But when they present wild ideas based on a duality or a false truth that that you are this body, only this body, they lose a lot of gas. And there's a lot of relief in that. I think relief is really from seeing that the I thought is not a permanent thing. Because all of the thoughts and ideas and whatever that come after that I thought are based completely on the idea that you are this body, independent from everything else. So if that's seen through, everything that comes after it loses a lot of weight. And then you're just here on a Saturday. So really, like, the cornerstone or the turning point of all the thoughts and emotions and things are based on the I. That's what gives it the weight, that they're referencing a permanent thing that is reality. And Ramana is saying, if you investigate the truth underlying that I, the I thought does not come from a thing. Yeah. And then there's a big breath of relief. Because it's presenting a lot of crazy ideas, the mental system. And because it's self-centered, all of those ideas are about me. Me. And then that me is seeing the body as the object of me, separate from others, through the senses. And if you see the play, then you start to see it as a play rather than, you start to see it as a movie rather than, let's say, reality. Yeah? Or like they say in, I think in India and in Buddhism, the dreaming. Yeah? It becomes like the waking dream. And the waking dream goes on. The mental system still presents the I thought as if it's arising from an independent, permanent thing. Because it's convinced of that for sure. And it will continue to try to get out of itself identified as that, but that won't work because it's not an independent thing. Yeah? And a lot of stuff can lose its weight then. Because it's living, its total faith and reality is put on the independent, the perceived truth that I am different and separate from everything else. Yeah, so I'll read it one more time for those who might have come in late. When the sense of I am the body arises, then the notions of you and he also arise. So when the sense, I am the body, yeah, I am the body, is based on the thought I, or me, body. When the sense that I, the I thought is the body, arises the notions of you and he. So me and world, let's say. That also arises when the sense I am the body is there. And there is a sense I am the body based on the thought I. As soon as your head says I, it references body. And then he says, but when, by the quest of the truth underlying the I, so the truth before the I, or where the I arises from. Yeah. By the quest, so the search of the truth underlying the I sense is put an end to. The I sense is put an end to in that it's real, in that it is an independent, real thing. The I, that is put an end to. Yeah. The sense of I might still arise, and the me thought will still arise. But the notion, the I sense is put an end to. So the truth that you are an independent thing based on this body, that's put an end to. So you've seen through it, even if it presents. Yeah. Then the notions of you and he also cease. So essentially, if you see that the I sense is not reality, then world and other also loses its independent reality. Now the eyes see world as separate. The senses identify world as separate. The brain identifies world as separate. Actually, it's primarily the brain that does it. The senses are just gates or doors to the outer world. But the brain perceives it as separate, yeah? And it perceives the world as separate from you based on the you being a thing. Being this thing. Yeah? So the thought I arises in the body. It points to this. But it presents as if I is a thing inside of this, which is this. Bhana. Om Shanti. The I sense, and then if you quest from where that I thought comes from, you see that it comes and goes from open space. Yeah. So because of that, the sense of I being an individual is put an end to. And because that's put an end to, so the presentation of I as a separate individual, when that's kaput, then the sense of world or other being also individual is kaput. That which then shines as the sole reminder is the true self. So then you're with what remains, which is what always remains, which has always been your nature. But let's call it the space of the self, the big S self, that everything arises from and resolves back into. Om Shanti. So if there's any questions, please let me know.